Layovers flight 002 to San Francisco. Hello,
Double
Alex.
O
How are
three,
you?
003.
Is it three already?
It's three already.
My goodness. Oh
We've
yeah,
already
because I
been to
assumed.
London and San Francisco, or in Hong Kong.
So I would actually miss my plane. I would have taken the wrong gate and gone to another flight and not to Hong. Yeah, see, I was attracted by Hong Kong. Actually, the nice thing about this show, it's actually the first show that we record after we went live with the entire podcast. So we actually have feedback now, and a pretty cool feedback actually, right?
It's been overwhelming. It really has. I can't believe the amount of people that have listened, the amount of people that have given us really, really positive and constructive feedback from around the world. It's been extremely satisfying.
Yeah, so we released two episodes last week because the first one was kind of a trial, which is why in my head it was a 000. It was 002. Anyway, sorry for that. We have great feedback on Facebook, all the channels. We have a few guys that really kept us giving links and audio feedback, and there's a lot of stuff we want to improve on. So we're doing actually today some tests with the sound. We'll see how these goes. The other good news is that the show is now available on iTunes. You can actually directly search for Layovers on iTunes and/or follow the links that are on the website. The show is also available on Pocket Casts, which is another app. I'm listing the show to other podcast apps, because a lot of people are requesting various apps that I had never heard before of. And there's a RSS feed, which is very important because it's the easiest way actually to follow the show. I'm going to actually spell it out here. It's feed.layovers.to, so TO /podcast. And with that, you can actually add it to most of the podcast apps and RSS feeds you have and listen to the show every week. Right, Alex?
Yeah, and I'm glad. The whole podcast environment is a little bit weird and disorganized, and I think has been since the early days of podcasting. So having people tell us where they listen to their podcast has been extremely useful for us to kind of get an education on how it works, and also make sure that the show is in all of those places. So if you did send us that message, thank you very much.
Yeah, and please continue to give us any type of feedback, whether it's via Facebook, Twitter, etc. We'll try to listen as much as we can. We're trying to improve as much as we can as well. And really, again, thank you so much for all the warm welcome we've got, whether it's on Reddit and etc. So moving on to the news of the week. The first news of the week is another piece about the 747.
Yeah, for a plane that's supposed to be on its way out, there's a lot of people talking about it. And this story I found on that venerable news and rumor website airliners.net, and apparently, indirectly, Boeing is being, or I should phrase this very carefully because it's causing a lot of consternation, that a pitch to Emirates for 100 747-800s has been given or is going to be given. This was on a site called Liam News and Analysis, which is a kind of an airline analysis and forum blog, and it's murky and strange that this story would even come up, but apparently this pitch, which isn't coming from Boeing, so I don't know who it's coming from, and is not going to the CEO of Emirates, is going to the chairman of Emirates. So there's a lot of speculation that this might be some political pressure. It might even be something from Airbus to say, look at the options, look at the competition. You've got no choice but to go with an A380. Personally, I think it's a long shot. I couldn't imagine this slotting in. People are saying it could get stapled onto the back of a 787 or a 777X deal for the middle of this year. I don't know, Paul. Do you give this story any credibility?
It's hard. I mean, that they've pitched, it's entirely possible. After all, we know that the like we said last week and the week before, the 747-8 is not really a success. Actually, I think they currently only produce 1.5 jet a month, so basically 18 jets a year, which is not a lot. They had some cancellations, actually. I mean, again, Lufthansa is the biggest order. The problem I have is that, there's obviously a lower capacity than the A380. It's only slightly better than the 777X, and the 777X has the advantage of having only 2 engines, so it's pretty good fuel efficiency. So I don't see the only advantage it would be is that compared if we remove the 777 from the equation, it's true that the 748 has less fuel consumption and a lower cash operating cost than the A380. So that could be something.
Which seems to be something Tim Clark talks a lot about. The CEO of Emirates he wants a 10% reduction in costs for the new A380 program. So that maybe that's what the angle that they're going for.
Yeah, I was thinking the same. I think is it some kind of pressure because we mentioned that Emirates is a bit pushing for the A380 to be re-engined. So maybe that's a angled pressure to say, look, if you guys at Airbus don't do anything about that program, we must just put all our business with Boeing. I don't know. By the way, talking about the A380, a slight piece of news here is there's a rumor that Turkish is actually looking into buying 10 A380s as well. So that could.
It seems like it would be a good fit for their strategy and brand and their model. Yeah.
So we'll see. I'm not sure that it's actually something that will. Of course, Alex and myself would be very pleased to see more 747 in the air. But besides that, we'll see. We'll see how that unfolds. Next piece of news. It's we've heard about this a bit more. Sadly, more tragic. We've heard about people falling from cliffs, taking selfies, and we've heard of people crashing their cars after taking a selfie. So there's this huge selfie craze. But I think it's the first time that we have an official report about a plane crashing because of a selfie. So there was I think it was a small plane, the NTSB, so the National Transportation Safety Board, which is the U.S. body that investigates plane crashes, found after a crash a GoPro that was filming the cockpit, and that GoPro revealed that the passengers were, I'm going to quote here, various passengers were taking self-photographs with their cell phones and during the night flight, using the camera's flash function during the takeoff, initial climb, and flight in the traffic pattern.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and apparently that led to spatial, that's another term they use, spatial disorientation, which led to a stall, which led to a crash. It's the reason I mentioned that is that there's this huge selfie craze that everybody takes selfies. Alex and I do not take a lot of selfies if you just look at our feeds, but it's a bit sad, and it's I hope that will be a kind of a wake up call for many people to stop fooling around. You're still flying an airplane, right? You're not just.
Yeah, it's apparently the weather was bad too,
Yeah,
and
correct. Yeah.
the guy didn't have the certifications to fly in instrument conditions or at night with passengers. So, I mean, goodness me, what a fool! I mean, it's a tragedy, and it's not funny, but it's a lesson to any budding pilot that when you're flying a plane, that's all you should be doing is flying a plane, especially with other people on board.
Yeah, it's like the don't text and drive, so don't take selfies and fly.
And fly, for God's sake.
So coming back to London, we discussed about Gatwick and Heathrow, but you have another piece of news about the third airport here in London.
The only airport that's technically in London, which is London City Airport, and by far my favorite airport in London. What a wonderful little airport for so many reasons. But they just got the green light to expand what is a very small airport at the moment in every way. Capacity, it's a very short runway, so short actually that only certain planes can fly in, and pilots have to be certified to shoot a very interesting and exciting approach. But they did get this $200 million investment green light that's going to allow them to add more flights because of infrastructure upgrades and more capacity through terminal expansion. And they're putting a lot of that money also into noise abatement, admirably, because it is right in the middle of the city of London as well. Obviously, as with any airport expansion, it's not been universally well received. A lot of the residents are a little bit upset, which in some regards is understandable. But this is a good, important airport, and I'm glad to see that this decision has been made. If you haven't had a chance to fly in or out of Lucy, as it's uh, colloquially known, it's a wonderful, wonderful little airport, and I encourage it.
Yeah, actually, they're not expanding the runway itself. The runway will
Yeah.
stay. They're expanding the taxiway though, so that actually should speed up the number of flights because since the taxiway is very limited, again, this is a very city airport. They have a limitation into how many flights can take off and land, so that should actually speed up the traffic. They also add some stands. They were built over. Actually, not a lot of people know that a part of it is built over existing piers. It's the Royal Albert Dock and I think the King George V dock. And there was some part of the expansion will be built over new piers that are, I mean, built over those docks to actually allow. And I think the terminal will also be slightly expanded. There's almost, for those who have never flown there, it's a little cube. There's the advantage is that you can go there basically 40 minutes before a flight and still make it.
Yes, absolutely, because there's all business travelers, isn't it, who know exactly what they're doing when they get through security. So
Yeah,
you
and
zip
it
through.
caters to the city of London, so it's very, the financial district of the city, and Canary Wharf, which is the other financial district of the city of London. So basically, it there's not a lot of amenities. That's why it surprises a lot of people. There's not like a business lounges and stuff. It's really limited, but that's the point. You actually go there and immediately in the plane. You can go very, very fast. So that's very appreciative.
Yeah, it's a great little airport. Fun to fly into because, like, normally at an airport, the glide slope or the angle at which you're approaching the runway when you're landing is around 2 to 3 degrees. Because of its position within the city, with buildings all around it, they have to drop it in pretty quickly. So when it first opened, it was 7.5 degrees, which is unheard
Wow.
of. I think that was the second uh, most extreme glide slope in a commercial airport. Now they've reduced it a little bit,
I think
but
it's
it's
6, right, or 5.5 or
yeah,
6.
5.5. So it's still pretty good fun. It's a great little airport, and I'm delighted by this piece of news.
Next is not exactly news. I mean, so if you were reading the blog, so we write some news. We know that we haven't been writing a lot in the past weeks, especially because we were preparing that podcast, and we don't plan actually to write every day either. We really a lot of the effort will be made on these podcasts here, but. I mentioned a piece of news about a documentary that will be released called "Living in the Age of Airplanes." I think I was in the summer. It's a documentary that was filmed in 18 countries across all continents, talking about how basically aviation changed the world, and it's narrated by none other than Han Solo, so Harrison Ford. There's the trailer, the teaser trailer is already online. It's been up for a few months, but Nat Geo will, as announced, that he will distribute it in cinemas in April. So that's pretty cool because the I will put obviously the link on the show notes. You should watch if you love airplanes. You should definitely watch. Even the teaser trailer is so well done. It's fascinating. It's something that I really want to see, and for all these aviation geeks around, you really will want to see this, right?
I cannot wait to see this movie. The trailer is just it's just airplane porn, and it's beautifully done. And I hope they do a how they made it or behind the scenes as well because some of the shots that look like they've got look amazing.
Yeah.
And Harrison Ford's such a great guy to do it because not only does he have a wonderful voice, he's also a total airplane nerd. And has been flying his own planes for decades. And I think they're releasing it in IMAX too, so it'll be just spectacular.
Yeah, it will be. I hope it's great. I mean, obviously the Nat Geo deal, I think it's U.S., but I really hope that it will come in other countries, especially to see it on a big screen. I mean, we'll see that. Talking about big, but now, the big news of last week was because there was a dashboard cam that got a plane crash. It was really impressive. Another tragic piece of news. Alex.
Yeah, this Taiwan TransAsia plane that crashed just after takeoff in Taipei. Is really extraordinary for many reasons. The first is, as Paul said, the dash cam footage captures this plane skimming across the runway, hitting a taxi. People survived, which is wonderful and miraculous. Um,
Yeah, it's miraculous because when you look at the footage, you're like, oh damn,
there's,
this
it's,
will there's no way anybody survives this.
yeah, and it's an ATR-72, and it sounds like there was a flame out. The pilots, I think, did their best, but there's some news emerging, and they took the unprecedented step of releasing cockpit data recording analysis before the investigation had been completed. And it looks like, although it's not confirmed, that the pilots then turned off the wrong engine, i.e., they turned off
Wow.
the still functioning engine, which
Wow.
we don't know. I mean, we won't know, I don't think, if that was ultimately the reason for the crash, but it certainly wouldn't have helped. And gosh, there's so many things going on, I would imagine, when in a situation like that. And it probably was an easy thing to do to pull the wrong lever down, but
Yeah, and the Taiwan Civil Aeronautics Administration, the CAA, is actually mandated that all the ATR pilots are to be retested. So there's actually the TransAsia had to cancel a lot of flights during the weekend, and they're still canceling today and tomorrow. Today being Monday, because I know that the show is not exactly live. Sorry, guys. So this is. I mean, well, the investigation, as you said, is not done. The dashboard cam, I'm sure you've seen it. The link will be on the show. Obviously, it's a bit, it's tragic, and I hope that it was not the pilot error, because that really would have been a big, oops. But anyway, I don't know. It's in those situations, I've never been in one of those, and I'm not even talking about being a passenger. There's so many things that happens that it's true that I don't know. Maybe it was just bad a bad omen. I don't know.
yeah, it's a tragedy, and I think that that the pilots were able to issue a Mayday call and have already figured out that what the cause was, an engine flame out, which has been confirmed by the initial flight data recording output, is extraordinary and admirable, and that there were survivors is also amazing, and we should be thankful for that. But gosh, I think that this one has been picked up by the media because of that extraordinary footage, and I hope that out of it we get some learnings, and we can avoid things like this in the future.
Yes. Moving on to the innovation part, tech part of the news. First, we talk about low cost carriers a lot here on this show, and there's Scoot. Scoot is a subsidiary of Singapore Airlines, and what they've done in their economy class, because they have a Scoot Biz, which is some kind of business class, but economy class, they have a small power outlet, so you can actually charge your devices where you fly. The innovation, and I know it will anger some people, is that now you'll have to pay to actually get
No way.
They
Really?
say, yeah, so you say it's a $5 for short haul flights and 8 for a long haul flight, and you would actually have to do it while you board. That's a new piece of revenue. I'm not sure how it will fly, but I'm sure it will anger a lot of people, and maybe give ideas to other low-cost airlines. Although, and I don't know about you, Alex, I haven't been in a lot of low-cost airlines where there were any plugs available. That's the thing.
No. Well, exactly, and the current fleet, bar one, I think, of Scoot are ex-Singapore Airlines 7772s, but there will be an all 787 airline,
Correct.
I think, by the end of this year.
Yeah.
So they probably had inherited the outlets, and now will have ordered their new planes with them. But that's not a small amount of money, is it? It's quite a lot of money. But it's people will pay for it. They want their gadgets.
Well, I would pay for it, definitely. So we know. I mean, I'm not a full. I don't have interest in Wi-Fi, but I would definitely pay for.
Yeah, that's.
Anyway, well, we'll see if that idea expands or not. Talking about low-cost airlines, the orange one has news that makes you cringe a bit. I think.
It does. Although I am softening my stance a little bit on this. So EasyJet, in celebration of their 20th anniversary, have released a new livery, and it's the current livery is pretty hard to miss. It's the white fuselage with the big orange letters and tail, but the The new one is frankly kind of boring. Um, it's just kind of a wedge, an orange wedge that goes up across the fuselage. We'll post a picture on the show notes, but it's it's kind of dull. I mean, I get that you don't want to paint a plane entirely in orange because the more paint you have, the more weight on the airplane and cost, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But their rationalization and the reason for it is that it reflects the current brand identity and advertising that they have, which to me is not a great way of justifying your livery because advertising campaigns change, every couple of years. Liveries change every 6 years at the least for EasyJet.
I don't know if you've noted, because for me the most striking. I'm not a big fan either, but maybe I'll get used to it. That's I wouldn't have a judgment right now. But what I've noticed, the most noticeable thing is they dropped .com.
Yes.
Only says EasyJet. It used to say EasyJet.com, so they dropped the kind of this internet, URL. So what do you think about that part, though?
I think that they, when they started, and anybody listening jump in and tell me if I'm wrong about this, but I think at the beginning you could only book on EasyJet through their website, and this was also around the time when the internet wasn't as pervasive as it was, so they had to sort of really ram home that message of that's where you go to book a flight. Now, people know there's so many different avenues to book a flight that it seems less obvious. And also, I think that there's a real desire within EasyJet to elevate their image slightly from ultra low-cost carrier to something more accessible to the business traveler. So they've introduced this whole new line of business-friendly fares. They push really hard that they go to primary airports in cities, and there's a rumor that they're going to be introducing a loyalty program as well. So I think that might also have something to do with dropping the .com.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it's certain that starting with the financial crisis in 07, 08, etc., you've seen a lot of corporates deciding to move their business away from their traditional airlines just to cut costs. And I fly EasyJet, and I've seen more and more actually business people flying EasyJet as well. And I think that it's a good call from the company. They won't introduce like a business section cabin, but you can already, if you have some kind of priority system to get the best seats in front, the emergency exits, they kind of try to cater for some business people to have something extra, like you first in line and better seats because you have some leg room and stuff. So I think it's a smart strategy because they're seeing that a lot of the big corporations again are moving away their business. They cannot afford paying business class in Europe at least anymore. Plus, I mean, business class in Europe. I've flown business class in Europe. It's basically the same cabin. So
yeah, with the seat blocked off between the two of you, right?
So there's no difference. Where were we now? Oh yeah, Rise. I don't know if you've seen this. So there's a lot of new models that emerge with flights, especially with those short-haul flights that are not entirely commercial, so meaning with different type of aircrafts. Here it's Beechcraft, King Air 350. We're talking a series of these aircrafts. So it's a new system that it's only based in Texas for the moment. I think it's launching. It hasn't launched yet. It's a private air travel membership. So you pay, I think, $16,000. No, that's not 16. So $1,600. Sorry for that. That's the lowest possibility. And you have basically a number of travels per month between cities, and it's this 8-seater aircraft, and you travel in style, and you can do whether it's for business and for leisure. But the point is that instead of actually buying a ticket, you're buying a membership. So do you think it's something? And of course, because that's a trend, you'll have a mobile app, and during the mobile app, you can say, "Oh, I need the next plane to Dallas and the next plane to Houston, and etc." And you can do it. What do you think of that?
So it's very similar to Surf Air in California, and when I think we talked about this maybe on the first show, that when I first heard about Surf Air, I wasn't hugely optimistic because I started an airline. I know how much it costs, I know how long the certification process takes, but I was happily proven wrong, and Surf Air are making a real go of it. I thought, oh, well, they're just copying the model of Surfair. But it turns out that the guy that is the chairman was the founder and former CEO of Surfair.
Correct. Exactly.
So it sounds like they're doing the same thing in Texas, and if they can get half the success that Surfair seems to be having, then I think they'll make a real go of it, especially in a state the size of Texas. So I wish them the best. I think this model fills a nice niche between airline travel, business travel, and just plain private jet.
Do you think that's a model that we'll eventually see in Europe? I mean, I haven't searched. Is there actually something like that in Europe? I'm
I
not
don't
sure.
think so, not yet, but I don't think it's going to be too long before we see this. It's obviously in a hugely capitally intensive business. I think Surfair raised like 75 million bucks in debt and equity over there. I think they've been around for only 3 or 4 years. So, but yes, I'm sure that we will. I'm sure we'll see something similar. Where they'll be based, probably somewhere like Geneva, um,
Well,
somewhere central like that. But it'll be interesting to see. And I think this model is now being proven and will be replicated as a result.
yes. So moving back to larger aircrafts, 787 again, the Dreamliner in Japan.
Yeah. So the JAL Japan Airlines have released their 787-9 cabin, and it really is stunning for a number of different reasons. I found this on the wonderful blog, The Designer,
Oh yeah, I love that.
thedesigner.net. Um, and so the 787-9 has a maximum capacity of 420 passengers in its kind of tightest configuration. On the JAL 787-9, there will only be 195 passengers.
Oh
That's
wow.
amazing. That's nearly double the space. So there'll be 44 business class seats, 35 premium economy, and the rest only 116 regular economy. And the
Wow.
regular economy is 242, not 9 across. So uh,
When you think that United is moving to 10 across, thinking of moving to 10 across, you're like, wow.
and the 787 is a wide airplane, so that's going to be so nice.
Yeah.
And I think it's intermediary distance, middle so they're going to be using it from like Japan to Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, Hong Kong probably. Um, so that's business routes as well. Let's be fair. So I think
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think good on them to reverse the trend of trying to cram as many of us as they can into a single cabin. It's really refreshing to see an airline do this.
I've been flown with pretty much. I mean, a lot. I used to live in Japan, so I've flown with a few Japanese carriers, of course, JAL, more ANA because of my allegiances to the other alliance. But it's true that overall, I always found them pretty roomy, and I'm 6'4", 195 centimeters if you want to talk in metric. So I'm actually pretty big, and I've always found that it was okay. Uh, not every single aircraft. Flying economy from Frankfurt to Japan on ANA 747 is not that great for anybody my my height, but it's always been interesting. They've also had, I think it was ANA. They had that, there's the whole, and we might actually have that as a topic of a show once. The whole recline issue. Should people be allowed to recline in front of you? And there's been actually a lot of disruption in recent months in some travels because some passengers got very angry at some other people reclining. And what they did, they internalized the recline. So your seat, and you might have seen that in some trains sometimes, the seat wouldn't actually recline. The seat would actually the seat would actually go slightly forward. So you'd have an angle, but it was still within your own zone. You wouldn't
Yeah, the clamshell.
say the clamshell. So they always try to do stuff. I've seen, because I've seen just a picture on the business, the JAL seat is I think it's a B Aerospace. It's the one that I've seen. I think BA uses them, and Korean Air I think as well, or they're introducing them. It's a pretty cool seat actually. It also allows. So I don't know. we'll see. I hope I can actually fly that plane with that configuration and take some pictures. That's a good enough reason for me to actually go to Japan again, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And Jal, if you're listening, we would absolutely be honored to fly on the site.
Obviously. Back to Europe, and since I just mentioned Frankfurt, Frankfurt is an airport I do a lot of layovers at. I know that Alex, you do too. I fly a lot of Lufthansa, and one thing we mentioned last week that Gatwick was announced that they wanted to, kind of remove the queues of, the waiting times, basically. But talking about waiting times, without promising anything, the Frankfurt Airport has something pretty cool on their mobile app. You can now have a real-time view of the waiting times at security and at passport control, and I think that's actually really, really useful. I would.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about you, I don't download airport apps. I also avoid to download too many airline apps because at the end I could have dozens and dozens on my iPhone. But that is enough good reason to actually download the app because that will really help me actually knowing. And not only that, you can actually navigate. You can also figure out the shortest route between 2 points on the app, and that's amazing.
That's incredibly helpful at Frankfurt because, and I still don't know the pattern yet, but there are some times when I'm transiting through Frankfurt when you have to go through security in between your flights, and if there's no security and you're like, I have a 40-minute layover, I'll make it. But if you have to go through security, that's when you start to panic.
I never understood that. I know that we suffer here, both living in London, because the UK is not part of Schengen, so you have to go again past passport control. And I think that depending on where you land, which gate you are at Frankfurt, you have to go through security, and we're talking about international security. You're mingled with people traveling overseas, and sometimes it takes you up to 20-30 minutes just to I've missed planes because of that. And I'm not bashing Frankfurt. I'd really say that next time I'll use the app to know where I'm at and actually go the fastest route possible. That would be really useful, and I encourage other airports to do the same thing because it's really one of the biggest pain points in travel is not to know how much time security will take. And that's for me one of the best solution was just to know, it's going to be half an hour, 10 minutes, or 2 hours.
Yeah, it's nice to see an airport being proactive and using technology to solve an obvious problem.
A small one again for me because the founders are friends. WonderTab. So if you're on your desktop and you have Google Chrome installed, which is a browser, you can install now an extension called WonderTab. And every time you open a new tab, basically, instead of having the blank new tab, you'll have a very nice picture of a destination with a very good deal as well. It's really beautifully done.
Oh, that's dangerous.
Yeah, that's very dangerous. So it's a brainchild from HitList. HitList is the app that actually you can, and we'll talk about it one day. It's an app that you just tell it where you want to go, and then it gives you back information. Oh, now there's a good time because there's a good deal. So basically, it's kind of a companion to that experience. It's really well done. The images are really nice, but as Alex just said, it's extremely dangerous. But I will put the link, and we'll have one of the founders on the show soon. And talking about that, since we're moving then to the app of the week, I just wanted to say that we had a lot of requests of people wanting to be guests, which is great. I mean, we honestly are again overwhelmed by the demand and the positive feedback. We will open the show to guests in a few episodes. We're still, as we said at the inception of this show, we're still testing it out, but we will definitely have guests. So thank you so much for all of you guys that have shown interest in it. Moving to the app of the week, HipMunk. Do you use HipMunk?
I do. I think it's a great app.
So HipMunk is one of these apps apps and a website. It's both to simply book, find the best ticket fare. That will be in a minute. We'll talk about these systems overall. The reason I chose HipMunk this time. It's one of my favorite apps to actually find the best ticket fare. They have something that I really like. It's called the Agony. So usually when you go through these kind of apps, you'll have the best price, right? And then you can play around with the number of stopovers, etc., etc. The agony price is interesting because it's just, and it's not that magic, it's a combination, the way they display you the results, when you say I want to go from here to here, they'll display the result with a combination of price, flight time, and stopover. So they say, okay, the agony, so what is the best overall experience from point A to point B? Because, okay, that's cheap, but, maybe that's cheap, but you'll take like 44 hours. I mean, that happened to me sometimes. 44 hours to go to point A to point B, whereas with this one, we actually have a better flight experience because it's shorter, has less stopovers. And I really enjoy the way it's also designed. It's both, again, on mobile and on the desktop. They both actually work together. If you log in, you can actually save searches, etc. So it's really, really well done, and I encourage you to use it.
Yeah, I like it as well. It's one of the first few places I go to when I'm looking for fares, and they're not doing anything revolutionary to get you cheaper fares, but the way that they, as Paul said, the way that they display the information is reasonably revolutionary by doing it in almost like a Gantt chart fashion to show not just price but also duration and stops in relation to all of the other flight results, which is so helpful. And the agony thing is nice, which is, I think it's just price, duration, and layovers or stopovers. But I think they also should do like age of airplane and stuff like that. That's pretty interesting stuff. But I like them. I think they're great. It was started by one of the guys who started Reddit.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So or it was one of the earliest employees of Reddit at the very least. But yeah, it's a great way to find flights, and it's usually one of the places I stop. It is quite U.S. centric, I've found.
Correct.
But that doesn't mean you shouldn't use it. I think it's a good starting point to find good fares.
So talking about keeping on the subject, because that's the main topic of the week, all these OTAs, all these online travel agents that we can use, and there are apps and there are services, etc., etc. So Alex's dad finally discovered the ITA matrix. So you were just saying that, you would like to know the age of the plane. So I'm not sure you can do the age of the plane or the ATA matrix, sorry, but you can do so many things on that one, and we'll get then to the meat of the subjects, but you can actually exclude specific airports you don't want to stop over at. You can disallow the red-eye flights out of your research. You can say that you want the max connection time should be that amount, the minimum connection time should be that other amount. You can also search by booking class, which is actually very rare that you're able to do. It's all a bit command line meaning that it's not totally, the interface is a bit it's not very intuitive at the very beginning, but it's something that is so that allows me to introduce that's the topic of the week. What do you use as to find a ticket price? Do you use Matrix?
Yes. So yeah, Matrix is an interesting piece of software. It's kind of like a piece of exhaust from a broader product. So ITA came up with this product called QPX or QPix, which was the backbone for companies like Orbitz and Kayak and Cheap Tickets, and then also airlines, big airlines, American Airlines, United, U.S. Airways, Virgin Atlantic, use it as their primary kind of ticketing and reservation system, global distribution service, that type of thing. So it's really kind of at the very start of the whole distribution process, which I always think is where you should start when you're looking for a ticket, because you're not kind of adding layers of people taking 2% here and 5% there. But the ITA matrix is complicated. You have to be very comfortable with fare codes and airport three-letter codes and all of that type of stuff, and it's not giving you HipMunk-like results. But if
sorry, and I will actually post a link on the show notes which has kind of a cheat sheet, so you can be able to actually, if you want to try it out, you'll have some of the Go on, sorry.
No, Google bought ITA. Let's see, quite a while ago, 3 or 4 years ago, and they've in turn created Google Flight Search, which is a simplified version of the Matrix, but not nearly as powerful or as versatile.
but extremely fast. I mean,
Oh
we, we,
yeah.
we just thought it's interesting because Google's bought IT. A lot of people were a bit scared. Oh, Google is going into travel. What's going to happen? And pretty much not a lot of stuff happened for a while, right?
No,
They,
nothing.
ITA still goes on. It's actually been like rebuilt by Google. It's hosted obviously now by Google. It's faster than it used to be, that's for sure. But the interface hasn't changed a lot, though. Like you just said, Google Flights. So if you just do google.com/flight, you can have a really, really, really fast search engine for flights. It really works well. To be honest, as I said before, out of habit, I still use HipMunk. Usually one of my first destination point. But more and more, I also use Google Flight just because of the sheer speed of that thing. It just goes really, really, really rapidly. And but it's interesting because they really haven't advertised it a lot.
No, I don't think they're 100% happy with it, would be my guess, but it does provide great results. My first port of call for any well, reasonable, I don't think I ever take flights that are totally standard, but if it's reasonably standard, like I know where I'm going and kind of when I'm going, I gravitate towards kayak.
Do you actually, sorry, do you actually use any direct website from airlines or apps from airlines, or you just go to OTAs?
Up until recently, if it was international and it was a place that they served, I almost went straight to Virgin because I was a gold card holder on Virgin. I had points to redeem. Um, but Virgin actually took away some of the functionality on their website that allow you to search by fare class. And I wrote a couple of blog posts about this on my own blog. But you can't just upgrade any old fare. Like let's say you book a fare in economy. You can't just automatically then say, okay, I want to use my miles to upgrade to upper class. You have to book in a certain fare bucket, and there's usually between 7 and 9 fare buckets per seat, which is where it starts to get really complicated. But the Virgin Atlantic site used to allow you to search for a specific fare class, so you could find the cheapest upgradable fare really, really easily. They took that away. I don't know why. But on ITA Matrix, you can. You can say, I want to fly on this route on Virgin with these fare classes, knowing that they're upgradable, and it would give you the results and the prices. So if you are a frequent flyer who upgrades or does mileage runs, ITA Matrix is an indispensable tool.
Agreed, agreed. The other one we mentioned it last week that is fun to play with is Adioso. Is this site? They have no mobile equivalent, but so no mobile app. But this is a site where you can do a lot of things in a very UI friendly manner. You can again, I will use an example I think I mentioned last week and say I want to go to, I don't know, let's say Narita, and but I'm ready to fly whenever in the next year, and I want to go there for roughly 5 days. And you just put that, and then it looks at this is a different way of looking at pricing than just saying, okay, I know that we'll fly on December 23rd and come back on January 1st, something like that. This one allows for a little bit more of freedom. It's really well done. Again, I've not heard about it a lot, meaning that it seems to have been around for quite a while. I'm not sure they're going anywhere. I mean, it works fine, right? I mean, I'm not saying the development has been abandoned, but I haven't really heard anything from them in quite a long time. But it's still a very cool tool to play with, especially if you're not willing to play a lot with all these bizarre codes that Matrix allows you to play with. The other thing that's interesting about Google is that actually it's true that Google you might not actually know about Google Flight, but in the search engine itself, if you just enter a query of flight from to, it will display you a box on top which has some very interesting features as well. Not only that, we will also actually, if you're using Gmail, that same box will appear to actually, it will find within your Gmail your booking reservations and actually take it off, and you'll have a display of what are your next flight. So actually Google might not directly go into the market to be an OTA in a certain way, but they still help people that just use a basic search engine to look for flights, because they released a report. It's called the Travel's Road to Decision. So obviously, if you read that report, and I will link it in the show notes, they say, but I think rightfully so, that a lot of people now start planning by just Googling stuff. They just go on Google and say, okay, and that applies both for leisure and business travelers. But one of the findings I find interesting is that, the exchange between Alex and me showed that there's not one major OTA that is the winner takes it all. There's brand recognition amongst the kayaks and the Skyscanner, and HipMunk are obviously smaller, and I forgot one. There's one other big that I keep forgetting. But there's not like a definitive one people go to. So that's the advantage for any player now. And this is maybe why we see a lot of actually advertising, especially in the UK, from all these sites that help you book flights, because there's not like this one big site has taken all the mind share. Whereas in hotels, it has been more the case. In hotels, you have that TripAdvisor is really a huge mind share. Not that the others don't have a chance, Booking.com and the hotels.com, but in flight, there's not. I mean, maybe you think I'm wrong. I don't know.
No, I actually agree with you, but I think there's a reason, or my theory is that travelers are different. They have different needs. They have different amounts of information they need to be comfortable with before they make a booking decision. Not just quantity, but type of information. So a business traveler is going to want flights that can be changed or at a very specific time from very specific airports, whereas a leisure traveler is going to be looking more at a price and not so much about flexibility. So and those different products cater to those different needs. And also there's that weird thing between an aggregator, which is kind of like what Kayak is, where you don't book through Kayak.
Correct.
In some cases you do for hotels, but you are then sent to a different site to fulfill. There are the OTAs like the Expedias and the Orbits of the world that you book through. And then there's the Googles of the world who are kind of in this blurred area as well. And here's another thing that's really important to know about ITA Matrix. You cannot book a flight on ITA Matrix. It won't even send you to the website. You almost, without exception, have to call the airline to get that fare because they're usually so complex. So that's worth knowing. But actually, one other thing on the ITA Matrix, if you are comfortable with its antiquated interface, you can find some extraordinary deals because of this little feature that says, I want to fly out of London or any airport within 750 miles or 1,000 miles of it. So, okay, Alex, that doesn't sound very practical. Okay, let me explain. In the UK, we have something called air passenger duty, which is a arbitrary tax that the government applies to flights to just about everywhere outside of the EU, and it increases the cost of your ticket substantially. Now, if I go from London to Dubai, let's do London to Hong Kong, and my price is £700. But if I then say, let's look around at other airports in the area, if it finds a fare out of Dublin, where they don't have air passenger duty, it could drop it by 250 quid. And all I'm paying for is a £35 Ryanair flight to Dublin to catch that connecting flight. So that little bit of inconvenience can save you hundreds and hundreds of pounds, and that is the type of power search that the ITA Matrix lets you do that the others just don't.
Actually, the same report from Google showed something that you just mentioned, is that it's true that because of the needs of the business travelers still have a tendency either to have a travel desk, obviously, so the American Expresses of the world, or actually to go directly to the airline site or app. So they have, because like you said just earlier about you, I go to Virgin America because I have my loyalty miles there, and I'm able to know at least you're not able anymore, but you were able to know the booking class, and you wanted to get upgraded or something. This is something that still caters more to business class people. I'll do the same thing. There will be flights that will go directly to Lufthansa and or Swiss and or Emirates because I know that this is what I need. I have my alliance there. I need to get upgraded, etc. So I will use those. those sites directly. The other thing, so I'd say Matrix is not mobile friendly though.
No.
Because they don't need to, right? But that's the thing that is also interesting, is to see that more and more, for a long time, a lot of people wouldn't have actually bought a ticket on their mobile. They would have made some research on their mobile, especially maybe, on commute, or when they have a few, like mobile snacking is what I heard the other day. I was heading this travel roundtable by Criteo, which is a French internet giant, and they there was these guys mentioned mobile snacking, that you would just start looking for stuff because you have 5 minutes, but you would not, the end of the funnel of the purchasing decision will not end on mobile. Whereas now more and more actually happen. Do you ever buy a ticket on your mobile or not?
No, I never have. But I asked that exact same question on Twitter maybe 3 or 4 days ago, and I was surprised by the number of people who said not only have they done it, but they've done it through airline apps,
Yeah.
not through OTAs or aggregators, which was even more surprising. I think that the more of a not power user, that makes us sound better than we actually are, but frequent travelers who have very specific needs on alliances or airlines or whatever, or looking for fare classes, I think are less likely to book on a mobile. If you just need to get from A to B, why wouldn't you?
Yeah, then again, the Google report I mentioned before said that business travelers, 36, what was it? No, 30%, around 30%, I don't remember, or 30% will actually buy through their smartphone. They don't. The interesting part is Google does not count tablets as part of mobile, which I think is kind of right, because tablets have it's almost like a desktop. I'm not saying that the apps on the iPads they might be closer to your iPhone, but the type of behavior you have on your tablet might be closer to having a desktop search. So it's still rising. So this is why most of the names we mentioned throughout this segment actually have a mobile app, and more people are doing so. And I'm actually I didn't see that question you answered, you asked on Twitter, but I'm not surprised that more and more people do. I think it must be, I think, the Criteo, that same company I just mentioned, they also released a report that I'll link to, and I think there was a year-on-year 20% increase in the world of people booking through mobile. So it actually goes there. You trust, if you trust a brand, and that might be the reason why people go through to airline apps, is because I trust Lufthansa, and I know that if I'm on Lufthansa and I need that flight, because again, I know that from point A to point B I need that flight, why not just buy it from there?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I would be interested to know from the audience what sites you use, and do you book on mobile sites? So hit us up on Twitter or on Facebook or on Google Plus, and let us know what your go-to site is, and if you book on mobile. I think we and everybody else would be really interested to hear and to share those links.
Exactly, and that will close that chapter. I think again, because it's something we do, both of us, very often, booking flights, so I'm sure we'll go back with news about this. Moving on, we had a question. So the question of the week, we said in the first two shows that we would like actually a member of the audience asking us a question. And the first question is by a friend of mine that actually supported us from the beginning, because he sent a lot of feedback through social channels. Is Gen Kanai. He's based in Tokyo, Japan. He works for Mozilla. And he asked a question that's a bit hard to answer, because he asked the question, delicate is the right word. Which airlines would you not fly on, and why not? So I don't know if you want. I did some. There are, in that the issue is that with that kind of question is there's a lot of it is actual facts, and there's a lot which is how do I say that? Superstition or rumors. There are clearly stuff that you don't want to fly. So the EU, for instance, releases a list every year of flights, airlines that are banned from flying within the EU. The list is exhaustive. I'll put a link as well in the show notes. All the airlines that are basically on that list, I'm pretty sure I would never fly them. Because there are really some very strange airlines. The FAA, so in the United States, do not release a list of airlines, but they release a list of countries which are banned from operating on U.S. airspace. And I'll take an example, because I've lived there as well, the Philippines. So have I flown internal flights to the Philippines? Yes, I've flown Philippine Airlines, which is a okay company, so I would actually fly them again. But it's true that I've flown also some low-cost carriers within the Philippines, and I was not actually entirely sure that they were completely standard. I didn't die. I'm here to talk about it. So I guess this is where it becomes a bit blurry, because how do you define if that? So they are. I mean, I'll let you talk. I'll continue after. Maybe you have another take on that. How would you choose an airline to fly, not to fly on?
Um, yeah, it's an interesting topic. I think that the list of airlines I would fly on is a lot shorter than the airline list of airlines I wouldn't fly on. um, I think I'm very picky about the airlines I would fly on. I like the way that Europe does it. I think it's very sensible. It's done by country and then by carrier and then by specific airplane. So there are some where they have said every airline from this country is not allowed to fly to Europe except this particular airplane. Um, and I like it because like Kazakhstan uh, is not a great hasn't got a great reputation for airworthiness, except their flag
Yeah.
carrier Air Astana is absolutely first rate. They're a four-star Skytrack airline.
Amazing, 4 stars.
4 stars. They're only one in all of that region, including Russia and Central and Eastern Europe. They are a very good airline. They're 49% owned by BAE Systems, and all of a lot of their management staff come from other extremely noted and successful airlines like Cathay Pacific. So to say that no airline from Kazakhstan can fly is unfair, frankly. But having said that, I look at a lot of these countries and a lot of the carriers, and they've all had major maintenance issues, major safety issues, unstable governments, like above the average hull loss per year and passenger death per year. Um,
I would add the International Civil Aviation Organization, which is part of the United Nations, also does standard reviews, and they actually give warnings as well. So I'm not sure though they have a list available to the public. I will look it up and I'll let you know, guys, if I find one. The interesting part is that the way that they will actually say something is that they will actually put warnings on some states, which doesn't mean that that nation has either a bad history, but you kind of imply that they might not have enough resources to ensure that the quality of care of aircraft and also the airport and all the ecosystem around aviation is good enough. So that's one source. The other source is the IATA based in Geneva. They also run certifications. And so most of the airlines that are on the IATA should be good. I mean, there's a lot of actually, especially in emerging countries, a lot of carriers are not on the IATA. So they also run tests, and so that could be another source actually to look it up. I know I'm very technical here, and I'm not saying this is an airline to avoid. And there are some other private resources. I think there's airline ratings is one, when the people actually rate airlines. And interestingly, because you just mentioned aircrafts, they have a 5-star system. I think it's 5, and they remove a star if the aircraft is a Russian built, which basically means from the USSR. So,
yeah, well, exactly. I think that's an interesting one because you have companies like Sukhoi, which is Ukrainian, but was part of obviously the Soviet Union when it started. It's a delicate topic, and it actually for airplane nerds, it's a really hard topic because you have these airlines which are banned that are operating these beautiful and basically antique airplanes. Like there's an airline in Iran called Saha Airline, which up until recently was still running 707s. And they're
Air Koryo, the carrier from North Korea. I mean, you know what? I'm sure they're unsafe in a certain way, but I'm sure that if I were to visit, I would like to fly a short haul just to have done it once in my life. So that's the thing. We all have our limit and our risk, and the risk we are going to take. It's true that there are some countries I would never fly in. There are some the major airlines I don't have a problem with, right? And I think the other, because when I talk to people, and we're not talking to them here about airplane nerds, we're talking about the regular people I talk to. Some people have a bit of superstition and about low-cost carriers, and I'm telling them, you know what, a fleet from EasyJet or Ryanair is actually very recent. It's more recent than I say, and I'm not bashing anyone here. KLM. They're the average age of an aircraft on low-cost airlines, the big ones actually, is actually very, very young. Don't you
Yeah,
agree?
absolutely. I think Ryanair's got one of the youngest fleets in Europe and one of the biggest fleets in Europe.
And they have something that, because of cost, they only run a single aircraft. They have one single aircraft, so they really know that aircraft very well. It's true that it's because they want to actually reduce costs and not to have to cater for many aircraft, but meaning also, or implying at least, that they know that single aircraft very well. So I wouldn't say that avoid LCCs, because that would be also a very bad idea. But basically, in major countries, Western, and I don't especially like that term. I mean, I think it's okay.
Yeah, I agree. And I think if you're really worried about it, check one of those blacklists, see if your airline's on it. Then I would strongly suggest reconsidering your booking if they are on that list.
Exactly. I'll put all the links in the show. So, and to finish, because again we're running at almost 1 hour, because we said we wanted to stay within that band. The airport of the week, SFO. So it's almost like a home airport for you, Alex.
It is. It's a great airport. And it is kind of one of my many home airports, which sounds, I know, a little bit contradictory, but yeah, it's a great airport that has been kind of going through a regeneration for decades now, for various reasons. One, in the 1989 earthquake, the international terminal or the then international terminal was damaged substantially. And then when the new international terminal opened about 10 years ago, nothing happened with what became Terminal 2. It was empty, and you could walk through it. It was eerie and weird to be able to walk through a ghost terminal. All the stuff was still up, but there was no life in it. It was quite strange. But now it has been re-energized. It is now the home of Virgin America and American Airlines. The one thing you should know when you're flying into San Francisco is it's not in San Francisco.
Exactly.
It's about 20 miles away, so you have to plan your transfer pretty carefully if you're trying to get into the city. That throws a lot of people.
Last time, that would be one piece of maybe trivia, and I don't know if it's still valid because I haven't flown there for a long time, but I think parking is still actually okay. You can still
Parking's good.
And it's cheap. I mean, it's not in some airports. It's just crazy to leave your car in an airport. You will basically you can buy a new car with the amount of the ticket parking. But on SFO, it's actually pretty cool. So if you have a car in San Francisco and you actually want to leave it at the airport, I think it's pretty okay. I think there's even a cap. I'm not sure it's still the case, but there's even a cap. And since we both like our apps, I'm not sure that Uber can come at SFO.
Yeah, they do.
They do. Okay.
They do. Yeah, and there's BART, which is the kind of train service that will take you into the city as well. It's cheap. It's pretty fast, but it's definitely loud. If you have time when you're in San Francisco Airport, in the international terminal, there is a fantastic museum that is built to replica of the original terminal from the early 20th century. I think 1927 is when it opened. And so not only is it a beautiful building inside, it also has a bunch of kind of rotating displays. And San Francisco Airport, I don't know why they do it, but I'm so glad that they do. They have these wonderful displays of, they rotate maybe once a quarter of any type of subject. Sometimes it's bicycles or old cameras, and they're beautifully curated and they're spread throughout the airport, and you can while away hours just looking at these sometimes they're aviation related, like they're old uniforms, and sometimes they're not. Like the last time I was there, it was fast food mascots through the ages. And it's all like museum quality stuff, so it's a real
God.
gem of an airport. It's not operationally whatever. It's a major international airport that has its problems, but that kind of thing makes it stand out.
And on that, this is it for this week's episode. Thank you so much, everyone. You can follow us on Twitter, on Facebook, on Google+, etc., etc. Just go to layovers.to. It's TO. I know we don't have a .com. Sorry, guys. That's where you can find all the information about all our presence online. And please, please, please continue to give us feedback, because that's very important to us. We're still, as you can see, ironing out the edges, making the show better. Whether it's because you want to submit a piece of news as a question of the week, because you want to mention something about a mistake we might have done, because we're not always, sometimes we do mistakes when we say something, or maybe because you want to intervene at some point in the show in the future, or because you think that the quality of the sound is not great yet, or anything, please do not hesitate. We love getting feedback because we really care about that show.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to give a special thank you to the people on the aviation subreddit on reddit.com who have been so positive and just given us great feedback, and they're the ones who told us so much about the podcasting sites and apps and everything like that. So thank you to people like Low and Fast and Fisher6266 for those contributions. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and Alex, I'll see you next week.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks. Godspeed.